Welcome back to the Whole Topic podcast. This is episode 7, and today we are talking about butchering 101. Like, if you're a homesteader, I'm a part of a mom's group I just joined on Facebook. It came up and it was very intriguing to me. And it's a bunch of homesteader moms, and there's over 50, I think close to 50,000 people in that group, which tells you how many people are starting to realize they need to know their food source, or just wanting to go back to doing things the way great grandma did, because the benefits of doing it, I mean, it's not always the easiest thing, but it also is very rewarding. So today we are going to talk about butchering 101, and I am at McDonald's again. It should be my last time this season. I have to be at McDonald's, so don't judge my coffee because I don't want to use the internet for free.
Supporting local.
Yes. So Ariel, can you tell us what you do with chickens? I know you kind of have a side business that you kind of work with people. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. My husband and I run a custom exempt butchering business, and we do mobile butchering as well. Normally we deal with poultry sales, but every now and again we'll do a custom larger livestock order. Okay. And we do this on the side to make extra income.
Yeah. And do you ever do any classes?
Yeah, we teach other people how to do it, and we were advised not to do that because then they're like, well, you're losing business. But no, I'm creating a sustainable community who can grow and process their own food.
Yes.
But there's a whole category of people that don't want to do it. So I will gladly do it for those that don't want to do it. But for those that want to learn how to do it, we're going to show them how to do it.
Yeah.
So.
And we've talked about even that, like with our homestead, people want to learn things. And if you're willing to teach something, like, I don't know about anybody else, but like, I will buy a course for $250 to learn something really well. And I mean, that's another business opportunity.
Yeah.
If you're teaching someone else how to do it, then therefore teach, because the goal is to eventually teach our friends and family how to make things work for themselves. If you need food, this is how you get it, even if it's kind of gross.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's okay. So just to be real here, I have not butchered chickens. In fact, the last time butchering chickens is going down, I was not a part of it because I had been on bed rest during that time. And so even when I was supposed to help with chickens, our friends ended up doing it. However, I did do deer. I remember for some reason people thought it was awesome to bring deer to our house at 12 a.m. which it just seemed, why was it always at 12 a.m.? So we're up until 3 or 4 o'clock stripping a deer and doing all the things with it. So I have done that. I've gutted fish, but I've never done a chicken. So I'm actually excited to learn a little bit from you too.
Yeah.
So
pretty intuitive once you get in there.
Yep. You just, I mean, my little girls loved it, which is almost concerning because they loved ripping the, doing the innards and all that. It's like,
oh yeah.
Oh, really?
The kids are so fun.
Okay. So let's jump into this.
Sure.
I guess a question that I know comes up a lot is like, what kind of chicken is actually maybe the best chicken for using for meat birds? And maybe even hitting on some chickens that could do both, because some people might want a dual chicken where they can use one for like eggs and then one for the same bird for butchering. So what are some different bird recommendations you have?
If you want a fast growing bird that's going to fill your freezer with the most amount of meat in the shortest amount of time, that's your Cornish cross. Those are the white birds that everybody says are meat birds, and half of the people think they're disgusting, and they lose their feathers on the bottom on the chest because they end up getting so heavy so quickly that they just sit and their feathers rub off. So and if you're not pasture raising them and you've got them in a confined area, they get really poopy and gross, and people just think they're gross chickens, which those are the chickens that you're going to get in a grocery store. Unless it's organic and it says it's a different kind of chicken. The Cornish cross is what you're eating from the grocery store. The other kind of bird that's very popular are Rhode Island Reds or Freedom Rangers. And those are for the people who want to get away from the Cornish crosses. Usually, they take a little bit longer to raise, but they're still a really good meat bird. They don't eat quite the same as the Cornish cross. They'll forage a bit more and scratch more. They get up and run around a bit more. But again, if you pasture raise your Cornish, you can get them to the point where they're scratching as well. So those two birds are the main birds that you're going to see for people who are growing chicken to fill their freezer. If you're looking at the people who are trying to grow chicken sustainably, they're going to look into the multi-breed birds like Wyandottes, Buff Orpingtons. There's a list of a few others if you Google them. Meat birds or dual layer and meat bird varieties. And through the years, we've tried a whole bunch of them as a sustainable bird. I think they're all great. The ones that are fast meat growers and can lay also, I liked every single variety that we had. I didn't feel like one was like above the rest. They were all good layers for us, so we never had a problem with them laying. And that should really, but that's because we're consistent with the type of feed, the amount of protein, how much pasture they get. We rotate them, like all of the scenarios. So, so those are the varieties that we normally see.
Okay, so we have Buff Orpington, and he chose those because they're dual purpose bird. And
Yeah.
we really liked having them. I do like the more colorful birds, but they're not convenient right now
Yeah.
because we're, as we're just getting off the ground here over the last 2 years. But that's
Yeah.
definitely been, I mean, their meat's good. And we've also
Yeah.
eaten our guinea hens. I know.
Yep.
That's kind of mean, but we're
No,
eating our
they're
guinea hens.
delicious.
They are
Yeah.
good. And it's, if you have never tried a guinea hen, they are basically all brown meat. Like,
Yeah.
that's, at least that's in our experience.
Yeah.
However, guinea
meat.
eggs, which I'm very proud of this fact, has 20 grams of protein in it.
Really?
20 grams of protein
I did
per
not know
guinea egg.
this.
So
Wow.
I know that doesn't have anything to do with butchering, but seriously,
Well, it's good for you.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So as opposed to 6 to 7 grams in a chicken egg, you have 20 grams. So we're doing 15 more this year of
Good.
guineas, and some for meat and some for, if you're mean, you're just meat. So mean equals meat. So hopefully we'll balance out and not have too many mean ones.
The neighbor down the road just built a barn so that he could raise quail. And we haven't done all the different kinds of processing on different birds. I've done pheasant and turkeys and chickens and all kinds of chickens, but I haven't done quail. And that one's my next one to really try because this is interesting. You'll like this. The proteins in quail eggs are different than the proteins in other fowl eggs. So if you have an egg allergy, a lot of people can stomach the quail eggs.
I've heard that.
Because the protein is different. Isn't that fascinating?
That is very interesting. And they're very small. I've heard people will do them because they like the size of the meat and they cook quicker.
Oh, yeah.
For a family of 8, that seems very inconvenient to me, but I mean, if we want to eat 8 birds in one meal, we'll go for it. But that's interesting because we do have a friend that's
personal
done that.
bird.
Right.
You'll have a personal bird every kid's plate.
Who needs a gourmet restaurant when you can just do that? Okay, so let's go to the next question.
Sure.
Let's say someone's just going to buy a regular chicken. They don't really care about the fast growing chicken. They just want to buy a regular chicken. How long should someone kind of expect to have to raise a chicken before they can butcher?
8 weeks.
Okay. And then what's the average weight for that? And can they go longer if they wanted the bird to be a little bigger?
These are good questions. So 8 weeks, it depends on the feed and how often you feed them. Are you giving them continuous feed overnight? At some point in their life, you should think about taking it away. There are calculators online that show you the feed to age ratio, how much feed you should be feeding them every day to get your bird to optimum size. I think the perfect bird size is 5 to 6 pounds. That's my personal preference. A 6-pound bird is a big bird. That's a lot of meat. It will easily feed a family of 4, probably a family of 5 twice. I think you can get 2 to 3 meals out of that bird if you do that. Our family of 4 uses a 6-pound bird, and I can get, because I'm nitpicky about it, I get four meals out of it. And that's including the bones and everything, and using scrapings of the chicken after you boil it. Like it's all there. Now you can grow them out longer. you're risking health issues when you grow them out longer.
I also
But
found that meat gets tougher the longer, and I
as,
hate that. The longer
yeah,
that it sits, it just feels like it gets so tough.
yeah.
And
Well, did you ice them down right away?
I think they did. I mean,
Yeah,
it was freezing out the day we did it anyway,
yeah,
but I think they did. We had some people that came and helped us do it, and so I'm pretty sure they did. But
okay.
the buff organs, especially, I think we did them at like 18 or 20 weeks, which
Oh, you
was
did the
kind of a long
buffs.
time.
Yeah,
So
those
I've
are gonna
wondered,
be tougher
yes,
just because they're not like Cornish. Cornish is like butter on your mouth. It just
yes,
is so
they melt in your
tender.
mouth. Yes,
Yeah, they're so delicious. But some people find their flavor bland, and half
Mhm.
of that's the feed you're feeding, right?
Yes,
And because they aren't scratching and they're not
yes.
eating better foods. So you
I
can augment your flavors.
Okay, and I guess that would lead to the next question is like, okay, so this is going to be kind of a two-part question.
Yeah.
What kind of feed would you give your chickens, and is fermenting more beneficial? Like we ferment our chicken feed. One of the reasons is, well, it's good for their gut, but the second reason is it goes further. Like
Yeah.
they eat less because they're getting a lot of their liquid and stuff through that.
Yeah.
So if someone just wanted to feed their chicken grain, what kind of food would it be best? And if they wanted to ferment it, what are the benefits of doing that?
So there is a protein ratio that I believe in that you should be looking for in your blends. I think you should get away from all commercialized feed and you should go with a local feed source if you can. Try to find a granary. Try to find somebody that will grow it. You can custom blend, you can mix yourself at home, you can buy organic sunflower seed and organic grains and all these things, and you can make your own custom mix. Those are the ones that I would do. But if someone's already doing it and willing to do it for you and you can get it for a good price, go to them and support them. Fermenting is the way to go. I know I don't always get to it. Sometimes we forget, and that's okay. But it takes all the powder and the dryness out. And so you're not wasting as much feed because half of that gets scattered and
It
blown.
does.
And
Chickens are the worst.
yeah, it goes everywhere. So if you can wet it down, not like a slurry, but like a thick pancake batter
Mhm.
is a good one. And we just talked to a guy yesterday because we were butchering down south for somebody, and he was talking to us about, the waste that was happening but he'd never heard of fermenting his grains.
Yep.
So that was all news to him. He was like, "What? Like,
Yeah.
I leave it overnight?" I was like, "Actually, you should leave it for like 2 to 3 days. Let it
Yep.
really get some culture in there." And
Yeah.
he was like, "Really?" I was like,
And
"Yeah,
it's good
man.
for their gut and everything. Like we noticed our
Yeah,
chickens ate a lot less when we
yeah.
started fermenting. But also, Stephanie, who's not here today, she's in Hawaii, making us all jealous.
Lucky
But
duck."
she actually told me that if you take a little, so say you're starting a new bucket,
Yeah.
take about a cup from your already
Yes.
started bucket, and it will help your other bucket like ferment
Yeah.
faster if you're like in need of it. But
Yeah.
it definitely cut back on so much waste that we were seeing
Yeah.
with our chickens, and it's
That's
just good for their
awesome.
gut.
Yeah.
So, and what do you think about scraps? Like, is there, okay, so I heard the average American family gets rid of about 50 pounds of scraps per week. That's a
Yeah.
lot of scraps.
It is.
So for us, something that has been really cool to see on the homestead is like, normally that probably would have gone in the trash can if you were, in the city, or like, because, even though my kid, like, I want them to eat, sometimes they're
Yeah.
not going to eat.
Yeah.
So we've been able to take pretty much everything we have for any sort of scraps.
Yeah.
We take our rotten milk, or sometimes our whey. We've even fermented our grain with whey
Yeah.
from our cheese making, which I know not everyone has access to, but this is just telling you like how much you probably have
Yeah.
from your chicken, like from your table scraps that you can feed your chickens. And when we started doing that, oh my gosh, they eat even less
Yeah. Feed.
of the feed.
Yeah.
So it saved us a lot of money there. We've been lucky enough to have a local grain like feed place here that actually does organic feed.
Oh, sweet.
And they're like 15 minutes from our house. So that's been super helpful. But
Nice.
is there anything chickens should not have for table scraps?
Yeah, but I don't know, my mom's gonna be angry at me for saying this. I don't think they care. I think the chickens will do just fine with anything, even the things that technically are poisonous to them.
Okay.
We've thrown literally everything, including the things that they aren't supposed to eat, out there to them. And they either avoid it or they take a taste and they realize this isn't for me.
Yeah.
I
And
just
I've heard
wouldn't
they will
give
do
them.
that.
Yeah. And
Those-
a lot of creatures will. I feel like it's instinct.
I do
Like,
that.
yeah, like you taste it and you're like, this is
That's not
bad for me. Yeah, no. But just the really, really moldy stuff. Like I've thrown out mold to them, but not deep dark mold.
Yes.
But then
yes.
we personally have to measure the balance of, okay, how much scraps are going to go towards the chickens, and then how much of the scraps are going to go towards the compost.
Mhm.
So, but they kind of work in harmony because we throw it out to the compost and the chickens just go there anyway. So they're
So,
pooping all over the
While we're
compost.
on this compost thing, I know this is a little off topic, but I think it has something to do with this. Is when you compost, do you only put like vegetables and fruit scraps, or do you actually put food that you would cook off your table in there as well and just keep stirring everything in?
I put everything in my compost pile. Everything. I try not to put the bones
Mhm.
in there because it attracts the bear. Um,
The
and
bears.
and some of the local coyotes.
Yep.
So we have a drop pit in the back for bones and carcasses and stuff because we process a lot of meat. But in the regular compost pile, we do the manure from the sheep, from the pens, manure from the chickens. We layer it, and in that is all of their straw and bedding. So, and then we add food scraps, and then we add wood chips. And then when we keep turning it and aerating it, and that's kind of like key, and watering it down. These are all keys to making good compost.
Mhm.
Check the temperature, make sure it's hot and it's working, and keep turning it, keep watering it, keep adding layers of things. And then when I'm ready for it, there's this good amount of compost mix, but then I take it, I put it in another barrel, I add all the comfrey leaves that I can, and I chop it up and I add water and it sits as compost tea.
That's
So
awesome.
I found that works the best because it's got the manure, it's got all the green materials from the plants, it's got the wood chips, which adds the mycelium to the ground. And that replenishes like your selenium and different
Mhm.
things that are missing. So it's just good to have everything.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I've done some food, but I've stuck more to like
Veggie
vegetables and
scraps.
fruit kind of things. But knowing that you can throw more out there, that's actually really good to know. But
Yeah,
so here's another question.
sure.
How do you calculate how much meat your family would need in a year?
You use Dr. Google and you type in, because they already have a calculator online for that. The other way you can do it without using the internet is to literally track your own usage. So how much in poundage, you need to get the poundage of how much meat your family is eating of that variety of meat in a week that's comfortable for you. And then just do the math out to see how much that would be in a year. And factor in also, do you eat more of a certain meat at a certain time of the year? So people tend to eat more turkey around November. Just culturally, that's what they do. But maybe you're a hunter and you eat more venison in the fall, or you eat more fish in the spring. So just knowing when you should be having those meats, and you can calculate out how much you need.
So then I guess that would lead to the next question. What are the varieties of meat that you actually, outside of butchering chickens and stuff like that, what are the varieties of meat that you store up, I guess, seasonally for each? Like, how does that work for your family?
This is preference based, so every family's different, and I'm sure it's going to be different for your family. We don't eat beef yet, and that's because we don't raise beef ourselves. I did do a job one time and I traded for beef.
Mhm.
Like I worked for the beef, and that was really cool. It was nice because like I fed my family. That felt good. Like I didn't get money, but I
You
got
fed your
meat.
family. Yes.
Yeah, but I fed my
Yep.
family. The confidence booster right there.
Mhm.
I wasn't seeing that one coming. So in the fall we butcher venison, probably turkey during turkey season. Not just our own, but like hunting. John goes out and he gets turkey or he gets deer. That meat lasts all year for us. The chickens we do in the early spring and the fall because we just don't like butchering in the heat of summer.
Yeah,
It's not,
I've heard a lot of people say that.
yeah, it's not my favorite.
Mhm.
We'll go fishing. I have still yet to catch enough fish in rivers and lakes to put up for my family. We've only been able to do that if we go charter fishing on the big lakes. So I'm kind of disappointed in that aspect. I know it's doable, but we just don't seem to get out enough to do that amount of fishing. And I personally want it canned. So like I want canned trout or bass or bluegill or like I don't carpy. Like I don't even care what it is as long as it's kosher and just put fish in my pantry.
Mhm.
What else is there? I went pheasant hunting. That was fun. That put meat in the freezer. That was different. And then we butchered lamb because we raise lamb. But you know, people are gonna do goat, they're gonna do cow, they're gonna do any kind of oxen or what else are they gonna do? If you're not kosher, you're gonna do pig.
Yeah. So here's another question.
Okay.
Okay, first I'll give my opinion on meats because I definitely do more beef.
Yeah.
We do venison, chicken. We do quite a bit of chicken. I
Yep.
love ground turkey. Like that's my jam.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've done lamb like once a year, but
Yeah.
when we start raising them, I know we're going to use those for a little bit more meat.
Right.
So, like you said, it's just a variety. What does your family like, and what do you guys eat?
Yeah.
And making sure that you can fit that into. So, what are some ways that someone can save their meat without, say someone was off grid? Let's go with that. Let's say someone's off grid. They have the
Okay.
desire to go off grid.
Yep.
What is something they can do? How can they save their meat without having freezer, like a
Right.
giant freezer?
Right. You're looking at the curing process, the smoking and the salting. You still probably should go with cold storage. Like if you have a dugout pit or something, or you're just eating it seasonally and you're not preserving it very much. Maybe you're preserving it right away. The kids and I read a book for history last year called The Old Ensemble. It's an old book and it's about a town a couple miles south of us, and it was a logging town. So they're talking about how they traveled, the pioneers, when they cultivated the land, how they came across and how they were feeding themselves as they're traveling to go do this job. And they've got a sack of flour on their back, and then they would butcher meat on the fly, elk, deer, rabbit, squirrel, birds, anything that they could get. And then they would smoke it over the fire. And then they'd have that for maybe a week. And that was protein in their belly, that fuel to keep them going. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, that's it.
And we don't do that anymore.
No, and there's this book we've been reading. Oh gosh, I will get the name of it, but it has been so good because they talk about like all the things they did way
Yeah.
back when. It's like this 15-year-old boy's diary
Okay.
of his life and how he was on a homestead, and by 15 he was actually running the entire homestead.
Wow.
So that his dad can run the mill on that thing. It's Micah reads it every Friday night for family night.
Yeah.
With
Nice.
the kids, and like we'll all just sit there and listen to it. It's so interesting, so intriguing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess also just reading books and seeing
Yep.
what they did way back then to, preserve. I also, you can eat probably even canned
Yep.
meat. Micah's grandma canned
Yep.
meat. It was some of the best beef I've ever had. It was so tender.
Yeah.
She
That's a
opened
good
it.
point.
Yeah, and she would like roll it in flour and
Ooh,
salt and pepper and garlic, and then she would like fry it in butter. Oh my gosh, like
really?
that sounds so good right now, actually.
Yeah, it does.
So, and it was so tender. So there's definitely
Nice.
so many ways that you can preserve without having a freezer. Because we all know if you're going
Yeah.
to try to save, it doesn't really matter what size family you have. If you are going to try to freeze meat, you're probably going to need a pretty good size freezer to just put all
Yeah,
that in
to
there for a
store
year.
it.
Like
Yeah,
a
and then you
family
got to
of,
think about like what happens if the power goes out.
yep, how's that going to happen? Yeah, how you're going to deal with that. So,
Yeah.
all right. So if you and I both love bartering, we love supporting the local, like person who's our neighbor who's probably going to be there for us if something goes hard. I mean, we saw in the last couple of years what happened
Yeah.
when there was just mass control and you
Yeah.
couldn't even get into a grocery. Like some people, you had to like literally stand outside and you had to get permission to go in and go grocery shop. You had to like, do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I can't believe that people forgot that that happened
Yes.
already. Yeah.
Yes. And so if you don't have a farm or a homestead and you don't have a place for chickens and you don't have a place for any of this stuff, but you have the desire to know where your food's coming from and
Mm.
what's being put in it, how it's being grown. I mean, because if you're not seeing it already, if you're not seeing some of the repercussions of mass productions,
Right.
do a little research.
Yeah.
Don't go insane doing it, but just get yourself a little bit more aware of what your family is consuming,
Right.
because health is wealth.
Yep.
If you can keep your health intact, you are probably one of the most wealthiest people. You never realize how thankful you are for your health until you have a fever or
Yeah.
are sick and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was so awesome yesterday,
Yeah.
because you didn't think about it. So that leads us to this: bartering.
Yeah.
If you can't afford to pay someone, there's plenty. Like I know that Micah and I are all about bartering. If someone came in
Yeah.
and did like either exchanged a good that they had, or
Yeah.
you know, for meat, for a chicken, like
Yeah.
one of our friends that I'm getting ready to barter some chicken and beef. Like she's
Yeah.
gonna give me beef and I'm gonna give her chicken.
Yeah.
And we have that. And she didn't even raise the beef. I just know where it's sourced and it's very well done. She
Right.
bought it
Yeah.
through someone else that we really trust. So if you don't have the things to butcher or homestead or all that stuff,
Yep.
find local people. And I know, Ariel, you're super passionate about that, as you're trying, your whole farm
Yeah.
is geared towards, you know,
Building
trying
community.
yes.
Yeah. A sustainable community. Yeah. Which is really hard to do because it's not like it's like the easiest thing to convince people that they should stop shopping at Walmart.
Mhm.
It's so convenient to go there. Everything's
is.
fresh. And to be honest, I still shop at Walmart because I can't get oranges in the middle of December when
No.
my kid breaks her leg and she needs fruit and that's all she wants to eat.
Yep.
So I'm really glad for the modern convenience while we have it.
Yes.
I need to know that I can rely on my community when stuff hits the fan. Who can I barter with? Who's got what? I don't want to necessarily think about the need, because this is the other like rabbit trail that people go down. Well, I put all this work in and I grew all this stuff, and people are, when stuff hits the fan, people are just going to come onto my property and try to take my stuff, and that might happen. Yeah, maybe you should think about it now and plant a whole lot extra where you can
Yes.
to sustain your neighbors.
Yep.
Like that's the whole biblical thing about leaving the outskirts of your field for
Maybe
those
start a
who-
community garden.
Yeah.
Mike and
Did
I
you-
talked about that.
Did you do that?
Well, we planted a garden with our fellowship, and Mike and I were talking about is like, you know, if we get what we need to make sure the community gets it. But I think if we actually make it an entire community garden, it's the community garden for our fellowship, for our like little community area.
Nice.
However, if we can do something like that and get people in there, and if you know, bring seeds, or if you can't bring seeds, just come help plant.
Yeah.
Just you have access to it.
Yeah.
Like that's one way you can slowly start feeding your community. Stephanie and I have even talked about teaching cooking classes here in our area.
Yeah.
For kids, actually.
Yeah.
Not that moms don't need it to some of them, but
It doesn't matter.
The
Your
next
kids-
generation is gonna need to
Yeah.
see that whole foods could be good and taste
Yeah.
good and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I think just being willing to find your neighbor who's doing the milking and butchering the beef and taking care of the chickens, the things that you're probably going to need a lot of, or raising the vegetables, find them now.
Yeah.
And get to know them and get to know their process, and figure out how you can contribute, whether it be paying them. Some of us can pay them.
Yep.
Or a resource that they're in need of.
Yeah.
That you can provide.
You and I both, and your family is the one that turned me on to this. We both play Catan pretty regularly.
Yes.
I had to get the expansion pack because my children needed it.
Needed it.
But if
they needed
they needed it. But if you don't know this game or what I'm talking about, Catan is a resource bartering game. And you have things like hay, sheep, brick, wood, and you build your own communities and you get more resources because you're on those resource lands and you learn how to trade and barter. Well, if you don't have a resource and you can't think of anything that you have personally to barter with, go outside to God's green earth because he's making your resources.
Yes.
Become a forager. It takes nothing for you to learn a little bit about plant identification in your area. Like I just went out today and I picked all the spruce tips. I've got like 5 different types of evergreen trees as a barrier right next to my house, and they were all putting off their new shoots. And I was on Instagram the other day and I saw this lady dipping spruce tips in dark chocolate and putting some sea salt on them. And I was like, that's my new snack. I want that. Yeah, I need that. So I went out and I picked a whole bunch, but then there was the blue spruce tree right next to it. And I was like, I wonder what those taste like. And I know there's like 1 or 2 that you can't eat. This is part of the identifying thing, but these ones you can. So, but I'm wondering, like, that's something that someone might barter with you for, like, or go find a plant and dig it up and be conscious of your area, don't overpick, but God already put stuff out there that you can use as a resource.
Yes.
So even if you feel like you have nothing, there's always something. You just have to go find it and do a little bit of work. But yeah.
And just get to know your community. That's really what it comes down to. Get to know your community, who's in your community. And if you don't have a good community and you have the ability to move to a better community, then do it. Like get your family set up somewhere where you do have access to the things that you need, not only for health, but if in cases of a crisis, like we have that opportunity. Like a lot of people do. Some people don't, and I get that, but maybe pray about it. Maybe there will come a season where doors will open and you'll be able to get yourself into a position. Like if you live in a state where raw milk is illegal, and you really want to be able to have access to raw milk and have access to things that some states ban, it might be a cue that you might want to work away from that area and get your family settled into an area where you have access to the things that are going to be best for your family's health. Because I mean, and like I said, I know some people can't do that. So I'm not up here being like, I don't care if you can do it or not. You have to do it. I understand all people don't have the ability to do that. But if you do, it might be something to think about. Just kind of think about and like, okay, so do I stay here where I don't have access to the things I know? Like I know my family needs, or do I start trying to expand and figure out where I can get my family located, where we have access to friends and neighbors and people we can barter with?
And I think that comes full circle back around to how you opened this podcast with being a part of that homesteading community that you're a part of. During the pandemic, it was like a giant shuffleboard, and everybody just kind of, you saw it all over the United States. And I'm sure it happened all across the world too, especially with the wars that are going on overseas right now, and always. But people are shuffling, they're constantly moving. And this was a big shuffle.
This was America. A huge shuffle. Everybody was impacted, I think, by some family member being like, all right, we've seen what we need to, and we're out. Like we're gonna go start.
And people were making their priority list. They were making their resource list. They were playing Catan in real life, and they were like, these aren't good resources, or I can't do this here. I need to move around. So that was really cool.
That's how Micah and I got to the homestead. And is we just sat down and we're like, are we actually investing in what we want to do? Are we actually investing in what we want our family to be raised in? And we made that list. And from that point on, I think it was within 1.5 years, we had sold our house. We traveled out west. It was during the middle of COVID, which I love traveling during that time because you weren't stopped by every Barney Fife on the side of the road because you were just traveling. So you ended up with a lot of freedom because there were still parks open. There was still a bunch of stuff open. And it was outdoors, but we made that list. And we took the leap of faith to step out into something that was probably I'll just say it. It was pretty scary. Because we had never done anything like this. And now 2 years later, like we have our chickens, we have our cows, we're talking about goats now and sheep. Our
Yeah.
house is almost finished,
Yeah.
to the point before the addition. But
Yeah.
just, it's okay to take that leap of faith, really sit down with your spouse if you're married, or just yourself if you're not, and decide, okay, so what is my end goal? Where would I like me and my children to be, or just myself to be in this amount of time?
Yeah.
And just throw it around, like at least consider it if it's
Yeah.
something you have the ability to do.
Yeah. And don't get bogged down by the journey, because
Yes.
that's what it is. It's going to take your patience and your time and your commitment and your dedication and sweat equity.
Yes.
Like, it's going to take work for you to accomplish what you want to accomplish, but get daily inspiration, because that is your motivation. Andrea, I love this about you. You read your Bible every morning at the crack of dawn, which is way too early for me
Crack of dawn.
to be awake. The crack of dawn, but you have coffee. So
I have coffee.
I feel
And I
like
have
you're fine.
Jesus. Like, what
And you
better
have
company?
Jesus.
Coffee and Jesus.
Do you have that t-shirt?
I need it.
I need it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that and I know this doesn't have all, I mean, it does, because if you're able to butcher, that's great. But if you're not, and you're listening to this episode and you're like, well, this has nothing to do with me,
Mhm.
get your goals, he doesn't give you a desire, and he doesn't give you visions for a reason. And I'm not into this like creepy speaking things into existence, but if you have belief, he speaks of that highly in scripture. Like, where's your belief? Like,
Mhm.
and not that just because you believe it, you're going to get it. Sometimes you're believing for things that is not his will. So
Right.
it really helps to be on the same page with your spouse. Like, that's some of the ways we knew things were confirmations for us, is we both knew it was the right direction. We just started walking. And if it
Right.
wasn't, then it would have worked out. And we were very blessed by that. But if it was, then we knew that was the step we were supposed to take.
Right.
But just giving yourself lots of grace through it, and not being afraid to just make the change. Making the
Yeah.
change, I think, is the scariest thing. It's like, okay, I'm getting ready
Yeah.
to go buy 40 acres and a dumpster fire of a house that,
Infested with snakes.
yeah, in the walls, because apparently that was good, mouse control. Said no one ever except for this person. And
Uh-huh.
so, but it's literally the best thing we ever done. And I was trying to think of that quote that I heard where it was like, don't get to the end of your life. A lot of people so that's what it was. A lot of people that get to the end of their life, they don't regret the things they did do, they regret the things they didn't do.
Mm.
So don't get to the end of your life and realize, I should have, would have, could have, I wish.
Mhm.
If you feel like you're supposed to be doing something, do it.
Yeah.
Do it if you can do it.
Yeah.
So
I like
that's
that.
my inspiration for now.
I like that. And that's your inspiration to people who are starting the homesteading journey, because you're fresh into this and you've
Yep.
got like that direct insight into
Yes.
this is different. This is
Yep.
change.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Like, I will say this, I'm not going to be like, wow, it's so easy, but it's so fulfilling.
Yeah.
It's one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. And simplicity doesn't always mean easier. Sometimes simplicity just means slowing down
Mhm.
and having your little kids around you as you're milking the cow or feeding the chickens, and having them share in the simple slowness that brings.
Mhm.
I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like, and I am city
Mhm.
girl 101. Like,
Mhm.
New York City is like, if I love looking down on the city and being like, oh, it's so beautiful.
Mhm.
But I would not trade the life that us and our kids have now for beans.
Yeah.
And you don't need 40 acres. You can do it on 1.5 acres or 2 acres, whatever you can get your
Right.
hands on. You can do it wherever you're planted. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's definitely been its challenging, though. It has had its challenges for
Mhm.
sure. So
Agreed. So to end this out, I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts. It's the Farmstead Meat Smith
Mhm.
is his business, but he has a podcast that he does with his wife called A Meat Smith Harvest. And so I was on like episode 84, part 2. They just sit and they chit chat about things. And I don't know, I think they're Catholic. And they're very learned people. They read nonstop. So they're into all kinds of different historical accounts of how people used food and prepared food and how it's been through the ages, and they bring all that together, and I really enjoy their vocabulary. I had to look quite a few words up, first of all, but he said something in this episode that I wanted to repeat here, and it's this: farming is restorative. Farming is a divine obligation and debt to God, to the God of creation, whom we have offended. It is a deeply and an eternal reparation with grace. And he went down this path of how restorative the act of caretaking for the land and animals and butchering and the whole cycle of the life and death and creation and using resources, how all of it's to our soul very restorative.
It's mentally calming. I can
Yeah.
honestly say that it's mentally calming to take care of the land and take care of animals like that.
Yeah.
It's
It hurts. Like, and that's a thing that is a big obstacle for at least a lot of the women that I meet teaching classes and doing this for others. Is there's the financial, the equipment, the how to, are you doing it with food grade safety? But then the biggest issue that I run into for people is their ethics. They're like, this hurts me. I can't eat this animal after I just killed it. I can't bring myself to kill this animal. Once you get to the other side of that and you've done it a few times and you take the time in your spirit to experience it and wrestle with it and go find God on it, you come out in a different place.
Yeah.
And you'll find other people who are there as well. They're very easy to spot. Their spirit is different, you know. It's they've found something, a connection to something. And I think there's a wrong way to do it, for sure. And I think a lot of people know that there is an evil way to handle the care of livestock.
Yes.
For us personally, doing things in a kosher way, in a biblical way, I believe there's a wrong way to butcher, and that's not getting all the blood out or not cooking it so that there's blood still in it, just because the Bible says that's the life force of the animal. Don't eat it.
I think that you're right about the care of the animals. Like a lot of these big factories that are manufacturing animals like crazy. Like Micah and I've talked about, we won't treat our animals that way. It doesn't matter. Like, okay, unless you're a naughty rooster. No, I'm kidding.
Unless you're a naughty rooster.
Unless you're a naughty rooster. No,
then
but
we
like,
kick you.
Then you're eating for dinner.
Yeah.
No, but like just making sure that you're respecting them as animal too. But also like I do know a lot of people that are not for meat. And I can understand it. And I don't judge people that feel that way, because like there's certain things I feel right now that I might change later on, or I might not change. And that's just how I feel.
Yeah.
However, there is a lot of nutrition in meat that you can't get from anything else. Like you just can't. There's no way anybody can convince me otherwise.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you're that person that's like, oh gosh, we just butchered that. There's been times where I won't do certain things, so I don't have to see the process of it. So maybe that's you, and you just need to let your person take care of it, and just go make your chicken soup and call it good. And everybody's happy with that arrangement. Yeah. But just, it is very true. You have to be careful with them, and you have to know the process. And
and I will say, I've found a pattern. It tends to get better for those who go through it and it's their first time butchering an animal, or it's their first time butchering this new kind of animal. Like maybe you've always butchered chickens and you're fine with it now, but now you have to butcher a cow or lamb. And just the thought, once you get that meat in the freezer and Thursday comes and you got to make lamb roast or something, just the thought while you can smell it wafting, and then you think back to its life and you're like, I can't bring myself to eat this right now. I don't know when I'll be okay to that feeling. I've experienced, and with the others that I have observed through this process after years and years, it gets easier. I honestly feel like that's your soul shining through. That's your humanity. And that's a wonderful sign that you have that. It gets easier.
Yeah.
But I couldn't stomach the first lamb that we
Yeah.
butchered ourselves. I could not. It took me 3 months to eat it.
Yep.
And my
And
husband was
I
like,
don't
"Are you
agree
ever
with,
gonna eat this?"
yeah, and I don't agree with
so much.
killing animals just to kill animals. Like if
Right.
they're food and you're nurturing your family, by all
Yeah.
means do what you need to do, but don't just go around killing
Killing
things.
things to kill
Yeah,
them.
I think
That's
that's wrong.
sport. That's sport. There's a
Yeah.
whole group of people that do it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That's something like Micah and I've talked about. It's like we're not just gonna take part in that. Like if we need
Yeah.
something, we're gonna do it, and we're gonna have to, especially
Yeah.
if our families, they need the nutrition and they need the food.
Yeah.
Which basically that's all we live for. We all
Yeah.
live to feed our families and make sure they're taken care of. Like
That's right.
who's not living to feed their families?
Right.
So this is
Yeah.
just, this is the way that we've chosen to feed our families. And I
Yeah.
know thousands of other people are choosing to do it now that these days this way. And it's so cool to me. It's
Yeah.
such, it's a oh, what do you call it when you're talking about, it's a resource. If you can learn how to do this and you can learn how to barter with other people, it's an untouchable resource.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost a currency of its own
Mm-hmm.
that is untouchable, because you can't condemn someone for trading food with each other. You can't condemn someone. You can't, how are you going to tax like, oh, I traded lunch meat for cheese, or
Yeah.
you can't do that. There's not enough
No.
Barney Fifes around to do that.
Yeah.
So just making sure that you keep that in mind. You're feeding your
Yeah.
family, and this is a currency that is almost untouchable if you can do it the right way.
Yeah. And to be aware of the times you're living in.
Mhm.
The government just did a huge step in for your food.
Yep.
Your meat, Bill Gates just bought up, and he is now the largest landowner of farm in the United States. Bill
Yep.
Gates is.
Yeah.
Be wary about your grocery stores and what they put in the meat. Be wary about meatless meats.
And
That's a whole
vegetables, even
category.
vegetables.
And vegetables.
Like they're now
All
saying
food.
it's easier to do some of these things with vegetables that they're trying to put into vegetables. It's like,
Oh, like putting injections into the
Mhm.
into the lettuce and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yep.
read
So
about that.
just be aware and do your best. Do it in small bites. How do you eat an elephant? Well, we don't eat
One bite at
elephants,
a
but
time.
if you do,
Yeah.
one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, well, this was a very good podcast. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed talking, and it is going to be on the longer side. So if you're up for
Yeah.
a butchering homesteading podcast,
Listen. Yeah.
you're definitely going to want to listen to this, and hopefully it encourages you if you're on the fence about how to do things, or if you should even start a homestead, or if that's a direction maybe your family needs to go, or finding
Mhm.
your people in your community. So hopefully this is helpful and answered any questions, or I'm sure there's going to be more questions on the topic.
Yeah,
But-
and if you have questions or thoughts, you can always reach out to us. We
Yes.
love hearing questions, and we'll probably do another episode and talk more about meats and get
Yes.
into the nitty-gritty about some of the things that are happening in the world.
Yep.
So
Yep. So we're going to close this one out, and we will see you all on the next episode.
you've been listening to the Whole Topic podcast. To hear more, to see behind the scenes, or to get a hold of us directly, visit our socials, Facebook and Instagram, the Whole Topic podcast. If you'd like to hear more from Andrea, visit her blog at dearmark23.com, where she talks about whole foods, whole grains, and whole living. If you'd like to hear more from Stephanie, visit theranchershomestead.com, where she talks about simple living, gluten-free recipes, and farm life. If you'd like to see more from me, visit wildandforagedcare.com, where I talk about simple living, wild recipes, and natural remedies. Thank you for listening, and God bless.